Okay, so cameras are interesting. Invented less than 200 years ago, cameras have managed to touch nearly every aspect of our lives and are an unignorable testament to humankind's desire to capture memories. As camera technology has developed, our relationship with them has changed a lot too. I'm not saying we're in love with cameras as a society, but the device in my pocket can shoot 4K movie quality images for some reason that's not exactly normal. Back in 1819, if I wanted a picture of something, I'd have to draw it. That's only a few generations ago, and like the contrast of realities between now and then really makes me wonder, what is it that really draws us to cameras? Or like, what is it that draws cameras to us more specifically? How do cameras affect us? How should they be used? Like, what does it all mean? If this seems like an irrelevant train of thought, let me remind you, the device in my pocket can shoot 4K movie quality. Like, movies didn't exist. We had to come up with that. This is overthought. Let's see what happens. So I did a little thinking, and I've determined that for every time period, the effects cameras have on the world and how people perceive them is determined by like 4 main factors. Those 4 factors are: 1, how good the cameras are; 2, who has the cameras; 3, what the cameras are being used for; and 4, how society as a result of all these things views itself. Every time period has a slightly different answer to those questions, so let's delve into it. 1800 to 1850. Photography didn't really exist prior to the 1800s, but people have obviously been recording images and drawings and paintings since the caveman days, not a new phenomenon. It took up until 1810 for an inventor to create the first camera and take the first picture using silver chloride. In the 1820s, the same guy used heliography, that's like asphalt on glass, to take this photo. It's the oldest photo on record still in existence, I think. Pronounced daguerreotype. How you pronounce that?
Daguerreotype.
Daguerreotype. The daguerreotype, I think, was the most popular form of photography kind of during that time. We kind of got portrait photography to explode a little bit. Yes, I can let you out of the room. You want to get out of the room? You're welcome. The daguerreotype was invented in the 1830s, and that led to an explosion in portrait photography. That was like a popular method of photography back then. But all of these early methods were like really time consuming to develop film and actually produce the photo. Like in the daguerreotype's case, you had to like treat a sheet of copper with like mercury fumes, or treat it with fumes after the fact. You had to treat the copper with fumes first, and then take the picture and then fume it again with mercury vapor, and then rinse it and then dry it, and like it was a lot. There was a lot to do. I wouldn't like to do all that stuff, but that was the limit of the technology, and it was, you know, state of the art. So from 1800 to 1850, we're going to say that camera quality was bad. All black and white, no video, no color film. The only people who had cameras were really like inventors, like rich people, hobbyists. They weren't really that easy to get access to. Like the average person would maybe have a portrait taken a few times in their life, if at all, like, you know, maybe once. Since it was such like a laborious and difficult craft to master, there weren't a lot of professional photographers. Even the military didn't start using cameras for war photography until like 1846. So as far as the effect of cameras on society, at this point in time, pretty negligible. It's a cool new technology, but it isn't life-changing really. It doesn't affect how life looks for most people. Not yet, at least. Maybe it's a little cheaper and faster than getting your portrait done by like an artist drawing it out, you know. But after 1850, the use of cameras and the applications of cameras like exploded. 1850 to 1900. Cameras kept getting developed and they kept getting cheaper, which enabled a lot of regular everyday folks to get into photography for the first time. In 1883, photographer George Eastman invented a new camera film that came in rolls. In 1888, those film rolls were put into Kodak cameras. And for the next 100 years, Kodak had pretty much a monopoly on the photography space. Everyone bought their cameras and then they sent the film back to Kodak. Kodak would develop the film and then send the photos back to the customers. Also during this period, it was the first time that photos showed up in newspapers. Some publications had pictures prior to this, but I think they were like drawn or like traced or like, you know, handmade. From 1850 to 1900, the quality of camera, or the quality of photos remained pretty much the same, I would say. I mean, there were advances in cameras. There were cheaper cameras that came out. It was evolving, it was maturing. Cameras were getting a lot more user-friendly. You didn't have to be an expert. And cheaper cameras put them in more people's hands, of course. Not that they were that cheap. I think the first Kodak camera that came out was like 25 bucks, which was like, at that time, like 2 weeks worth of wages. Kind of expensive, but more people had them, and as a result, cameras started being used differently. Since a Kodak camera could take like 100 pictures, there was less pressure per shot, or like there was less fanfare per shot, you know. Developing the film was a non-issue for people. They just send the film to Kodak. It was hands off, mess free, don't have to worry about it. Photography got really, really casual. Stiff, informal portraits gave way to more candid family moments as people brought these cameras into their homes and lives. Having photos in newspapers and magazines marked a paradigm shift in how images were consumed. And it signified the growing role and need in society for cameras and the purpose of disseminating information. People saw the power of being able to see the story and not just read it. 1900 to 1950, now things are really heating up. Not only were there a lot of advances in camera technology, but also the infrastructure and the economy around the creation and consumption of images took a lot of leaps. The motion picture camera was invented in 1893, right before the turn of the century. The first film projector was invented in 1895, and for the first time, people started telling stories with moving images. Cartoons were invented, as well as short films and then eventually feature-length films. Going from still images to motion pictures was jarring for some people in the same way that a lot of people can't really handle VR right now. But before long, people got used to it, and movies have been popular ever since. It's crazy how the top films in the world gross like $2 billion, and they're just images moving and sounds and all, and the production, but it's just images moving. It's crazy. In 1927, the electric TV was invented. In 1939, TV could broadcast sports games. A year later, TV had news, and a year after that was the first TV commercial.
America runs on Bolivar time.
Before this point, all of these things just existed on the radio, so cameras created an entirely new telecommunications industry. Also during this period, Kodak came out with color film. So all of these breakthroughs were happening. Cameras could do a lot more things now than they used to, and all of these capabilities are being used to their fullest pretty much. Professionals have their cameras. Some families at home have Kodak cameras. The movie cameras are owned by big studios, governments, and theaters are exploding all over the world. Cameras were starting to transform how daily life looked. It hadn't fully happened yet, but slowly everything that people cared about, from news to sports to good storytelling, all those things were being funneled through these cameras, and all of the infrastructure needed to transmit those images to the end viewer were, streamlined. Keep in mind there were also 2 world wars during this time period, so it was a little rocky at times. Also, people began to understand really the power of cameras in the use of surveillance even. In 1948, George Orwell wrote 1984 about a future world in which everyone was under constant video supervision. Big Brother. 1950 to 2000. After the Second World War was over, everything got a lot more colorful. Movies in color got even more popular. Color photography became more popular. Basically, black and white was seen as old and archaic, dusty, forget about it. Television surpassed the radio in popularity, so the majority of consumer programming completely revolved around cameras at this point. Cameras that were pointed at the faces of TV actors and movie actors created celebrities, of course, and then, paparazzi became a thing. Cameras following people. Music videos became a thing. This was new stuff. Just tying cameras to this, tying cameras to this, tying cameras to that. The first camera was put in orbit in 1962. In 1969, we went to the moon, and cameras broadcasted the event back home to people's TV sets. It was a brand new experience to be able to witness history unfolding from your living room. Camera technology changed as well. The Polaroid camera exploded in popularity because it had the ability to produce instant photos and just print them out. The Kodak company began to decline in sales as digital photography came to rise. And it was thanks to all the progression of computer technology that was going on during this time. People had access to more types of cameras than ever before, and they were naturally doing more things with them than ever before. 2000 to 2010. Things are moving really fast now. Rapid changes in technology are shaking everything up. Webcams are brand new. You can do video calls with Skype now. The Patriot Act has passed, letting the American government look through people's webcams. Film cameras lose out completely to digital cameras, and data storage gets way better. Polaroid goes bankrupt. Kodak is on its last legs. Cell phones start getting cameras. Cars start getting backup cameras. GoPro gets founded. YouTube and Facebook are created. The first live streamers get popular. The word selfie is created. The access and capabilities of photo taking and photo storage that the average person has is like Star Trek compared to what their grandparents had. And then with all these smartphones coming to market at the end of the decade, people are like actually starting to legitimately wonder whether or not having a camera on you at all times that you can use to post whatever you're doing all the time is a good thing. So now we're in 2010 to 2020. Now things get really crazy. Commercial drones take off. Cameras are everywhere, used for everything by people and machines. Cameras have gotten smarter. The Oculus set I have has tiny cameras on it for inside out tracking. Algorithms can look at videos and photos and recognize images and tag them for content. Smartphone cameras got better and better until they were capable of video sharing with 3G and 4G. This led to mobile video platforms like Vine, like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, places where millions of people scroll through their phones 24/7, hungry for content, and creators provide, making content for fun, for clout and profit, for artistic expression, if you're lucky, all three. But given that all this stuff has happened and we've gone through all of this, like, what does it mean? Like, what's the takeaway? What does it mean when we've gotten to a point where you can take a portrait selfie for your Snap story and go through 50 different takes before you find the right one, and you don't have to worry about storage because it's a non-issue? Like, what does it mean when you can vlog yourself online for the entertainment of the, anonymous internet for the rest of your life? Like, what does that do? Like, I feel like looking at the path that cameras took from being non-existent to being like an occasional tool that you sometimes have access to being something that's on your person at all times, in like the highest quality possible, like better vision than you. Like, it has to say something about the psychology of humanity or something, or the trajectory of humanity, all of this. I can see smart glasses coming around the corner. It's like a next step, like Google Glass kind of did that, but I think there's some better stuff coming around the corner. So like, are we gonna eventually put these cameras in our eyes? What if they're already our eyes? Like, just eyes that you can stick to the wall and, watch over your house while you're gone, or like eyes that you can set up in front of you and look at yourself with. And if I make videos and post them online, is that me like literally lending one of my eyes to the public eye? As an audience member, like looking at all of this camera content that exists out in the world, like getting accustomed to all of the eyes out in the world, like where does my identity end up if I'm invested in all of the eyes of the world that I have access to? What do the things that I capture say about me? What's the actual proper way to use these tools? I don't know. I don't think there's a right answer. Like, you can pretty much do whatever you want, it seems like. Some people are private and don't, use cameras at all. Some people live stream every day. Some people just post pictures of their cats. You really gotta just do whatever feels right, whatever you're comfortable with, and just not overthink it. Overthinking wastes time that could be better spent doing something productive or, looking at other camera content that exists. Don't overthink. That's the takeaway. Thanks for watching. This has been Overthought.